Hello, welcome to my debate video on pro-life versus pro-choice on the pro-life's perspective. So first we're going to define pro-life and pro-choice. Pro-choice is abortion rights movements, also referred as pro-choice movements. They advocate for legal access to abortion services, and they usually go against pro-life ideologies and are against the pro-life movement. Now, for pro-life, they are also known as the anti-abortion movements. They are involved in the abortion debate. They advocate against the practice of abortion services and its legality. Many abortion movements began as a counter movement in response to the legalization of elective abortions. So, of course, they go against the ideologies of anti-abortion or pro-choice ideologies. So, my three main claims. I'm going to start with number one. It's considered murder and morally unjustified. Second one, the human embryo. According to research in sciences, they consider an embryo as alive simply because once the sperm cell goes into the egg, it automatically starts producing cells, so they count it as the embryo being alive. And number three, most women who have abortions experience the guilt and traumatic experiences once they have an abortion, so they instantly regret it. They have to live their lives with guilt. And yeah. The three counter arguments. Number one, a zygote is composed of human DNA and therefore it is considered human and not a different species. So most pro-choice people would say zygote is not a human being simply because it's not born, but it's still composed of human DNA, human cells, so it's not like it's a different type of, being or species. It is still human nonetheless. According to the Guttmacher Institute survey, less than 4% of abortions have to deal with health complications. About 3% have to involve problems with affecting the fetus once it's born. So, for example, there could be a problem once a child is born, such as, having Down syndrome, having less chromosomes than others or more, have trouble breathing, or etc. And less than 1% of abortions have to deal with victims of rape. A third counter argument is all humans have rights, which include the right to not be intentionally killed. So what they're saying there is, unlike different humans that are born a number of ways, even if the fetus is not born, it still has rights because it's still a human. So giving the choice of intentionally exterminating them is morally wrong since they're human still. So you taking away their right to live is morally unjustified according to pro-life society. Okay, so here are my response to some of the counter arguments. Number one is the unborn is a human being, an early developed stage of life. So most people would consider a human being being born, so seeing it fully alive here, physically, visually. So they don't take into consideration that even if the fetus is not born yet, it's still alive and it's still a human being despite its early developments. So, number two is there are four important features of an unborn fetus. So, number one is distinct, and that explains that the unborn has DNA and body distinct from their mother. God damn it. The first one is distinct, which explains that the unborn has DNA and body distinct from their mother and father. They develop their own arms, legs, brain, nervous system, heart, and so forth. The second one is living. The unborn meets the biological criteria for life. So they grow by reproducing cells. They turn into they turn nutrients into energy through metabolism, so they can respond to stimuli. The third one is human. The unborn has a human genetic signature, so they are also the offspring of human parents, and humans can only recreate other humans. And the last one is organism. The unborn is an organism, rather than a mere organ or tissue, which is an individual whose parts work together for the good of the whole. They are guided by a complete genetic code, and they only need the proper environment and nutrition to develop themselves through the different stages of life as a member of our species. So this just explains that the four stages of an unborn fetus, it's still a living being despite not being here physically, and instead in the mother's womb. And the last response is gonna be talking about how unborn humans are different from most born humans in a number of ways, but those differences are not relevant to whether or not someone has rights. So this links to how every human being has rights despite it not being born or complications, etc. Unborn children may look different from other human beings, but appearance has nothing to do with value. So unborn children are less physically and mentally developed, but toddlers are less developed than teenagers. And that does not make them any less important. So unborn children are dependent on someone else, but so are newborn children and many people with disabilities. So just because they're not physically here does not mean we should, you know, just because they're not here, it doesn't mean we should think of them as any less than a human being, because they still are a human being in the end. They still develop human DNA. They still grow into us. That is it for my debate. Thank you.